If you're reading these words right now, there's something you need to understand about the exact moment your attention collapsed onto this title. You weren't randomly scrolling. Your nervous system detected a pattern in these words that matched a frequency you've been broadcasting, probably without realizing it. And that frequency? It's exhaustion. The bone-deep tiredness that comes from chasing outcomes that seem to move further away the harder you pursue them. I'm not going to tell you some mystical story about surrendering to the universe. I'm going to share what I witnessed working night shifts in a neurology ward, watching the same pattern play out in patients' brain scans over 3 years. A pattern that nobody talks about because it challenges everything we've been taught about achievement, effort, and how reality actually responds to human consciousness. The second you stop chasing outcomes, you create space for outcomes to find you. If you're hearing these words right now, there's something you need to understand about the exact moment your attention collapsed onto this title. You weren't randomly scrolling. Your nervous system detected a pattern in these words that matched a frequency you've been broadcasting, probably without realizing it. And that frequency? It's exhaustion. The bone-deep tiredness that comes from chasing outcomes that seem to move further away the harder you pursue them. I'm not going to tell you some mystical story about surrendering to the universe. I'm going to share what I witnessed, working night shifts in a neurology ward, watching the same pattern play out in patients' brain scans over 3 years. A pattern that nobody talks about because it challenges everything we've been taught about achievement, effort, and how reality actually responds to human consciousness. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent 847 nights monitoring neural activity in people experiencing what neurologists call spontaneous remission. Conditions that were supposed to be permanent, progressive, irreversible, suddenly reversing themselves with no medical intervention. The hospital called it miraculous. Insurance companies called it suspicious. But I saw something in those brain scans that nobody else was looking for. There was a specific pattern that appeared approximately 72 hours before spontaneous improvement began, not in the damaged areas, in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for future planning, goal pursuit, outcome prediction. The pattern looked like silence, complete deactivation of the neural networks that constantly project forward, trying to control what happens next. The patients who healed weren't the ones fighting hardest. They were the ones who had given up fighting in a very specific way. Not depression, not resignation, something else entirely. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday in March. I was monitoring a 34-year-old woman named Sarah, not her real name, who'd been admitted 6 weeks earlier with a degenerative nerve condition. Progressive, aggressive, no known cases of reversal in medical literature. Her scans had been deteriorating steadily, exactly as predicted. But that night, her prefrontal cortex went dark in that specific pattern I'd been tracking. Complete cessation of future-oriented neural activity. I marked it in my notes, expecting nothing. I'd seen this pattern 17 times before, and each time, within 3 days, something shifted in the patient's condition. By Saturday morning, Sarah's nerve function tests showed improvement that her neurologist initially thought was equipment malfunction. By Monday, she was walking without assistance for the first time in 2 months. By Wednesday, her scans showed regeneration that shouldn't have been biologically possible. I went to her room during my break. She was sitting by the window, and there was something different about the quality of her presence. Not happier exactly, more like settled, at peace with something. "Can I ask you what changed?" I said. She looked at me for a long moment. I stopped trying to get better. "What do you mean?" I spent 6 weeks fighting this thing, visualizing healing, staying positive, doing everything the books say about mindset and manifesting health, and I just broke. 3 nights ago, I broke. I stopped fighting. I stopped trying to control what my body was going to do. I just let it be, whatever it was going to be. I pulled up her neural scans on my tablet, and showed her the timestamp. The exact moment her prefrontal cortex had gone quiet, 2:47 a.m., 3 nights before. "That's the exact time I gave up," she whispered. "I was lying here and I just released it all. Every outcome I was trying to force, every future I was trying to create. I stopped chasing what I wanted and just existed in what was." That conversation kept me awake for the next 2 days, because Sarah wasn't unique. Every single patient who'd shown spontaneous improvement had experienced the same prefrontal deactivation pattern. And when I reviewed the limited data I had on their mental states, they all described the same thing: a moment of complete release from outcome pursuit. Here's what nobody tells you about goals, manifestation, and trying to create specific outcomes. Your prefrontal cortex, that most recently evolved part of your human brain, is essentially a prediction machine. It's constantly running simulations of possible futures, calculating probabilities, strategizing pathways to desired outcomes. This isn't bad. This is what allowed humans to plan harvests, build civilizations, create complex technologies. But here's what the neuroscience shows that most motivational content completely ignores. When your prefrontal cortex is locked in active outcome-chasing mode, it suppresses activity in other neural networks. Specifically, it suppresses the default mode network, the brain regions responsible for spontaneous insight, pattern recognition across non-obvious connections, and what we experience as intuition. Think about the last time you had a genuine breakthrough or insight. I'm willing to bet it didn't come while you were actively trying to solve the problem. It came in the shower, during a walk, right before falling asleep. In moments when your goal-chasing neural networks had temporarily quieted down. But modern culture has trained us to keep those networks constantly activated, always pursuing, always optimizing, always chasing the next outcome. And in that constant pursuit, we've deactivated the very neural systems that would allow us to recognize opportunities, make non-obvious connections, and navigate toward what we actually want through paths we couldn't have consciously planned. I started researching beyond medical literature, studies on peak performance, research on creative breakthroughs, data on successful entrepreneurs, and the pattern was everywhere, hiding in plain sight. The most significant breakthroughs came not during active pursuit, but during what researchers called incubation periods, times when people had stopped actively working on the problem. The most successful entrepreneurs often describe their biggest opportunities as appearing out of nowhere during periods when they'd stopped desperately chasing success. Athletes described their peak performances as happening when they'd stopped trying to force the outcome and just played. In the comments, drop one word that captures the energy you're stepping into today: trust, flow, joy, ease. Your word matters. Let that word be a small but profound declaration, a signal you send not just in this space but into the quantum field itself. And I'm giving away 2 one-on-one free sessions to help you step into that energy fully. Be honest. Be you. There's a reason this pattern exists, and it's not mystical. It's evolutionary biology interfacing with quantum probability in ways that neuroscience is only beginning to understand. Your nervous system is constantly receiving millions of bits of sensory information per second. You consciously process about 40 bits of that. The rest gets filtered out by your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that decides what's relevant enough to bring to conscious awareness. Here's the critical part. Your reticular activating system is programmed by your dominant mental patterns. When you're locked in outcome-chasing mode, desperately trying to force a specific result, your reticular activating system filters reality through that desperation. It only shows you information relevant to your struggle. It only recognizes opportunities that match your conscious strategy. But reality is generating possibilities constantly that don't match your conscious plans, opportunities that would lead to what you want through unexpected pathways, connections that would create the outcome you desire but through routes you never considered, resources that are available but invisible to your outcome-focused filtering system. The moment you stop chasing, something extraordinary happens neurologically. Your prefrontal cortex stops dominating your neural activity. Your default mode network activates. Your reticular activating system stops filtering reality through the narrow lens of your specific strategy and starts showing you the broader pattern of what's actually available. You don't suddenly become passive. You don't stop taking action, but your actions start coming from a different place, not from desperate striving, but from spontaneous recognition of what's actually there. I saw this in Sarah's case, and I saw it in every patient who experienced spontaneous improvement. The moment they stopped trying to force healing, their nervous system started recognizing healing resources that had been there all along. Sleep patterns improved. Nutrition choices shifted without conscious effort. Movement became more intuitive, not because they were trying to be healthier, because their reticular activating system was no longer filtering reality through the desperation of trying to get better. About 6 months after Sarah's recovery, I started having my own crisis. I'd been working toward moving into research for 3 years, applying to programs, networking, following every strategy, and hitting wall after wall. Rejections, ignored applications, doors that looked promising until they suddenly weren't. I was exhausted, not just physically from the night shifts, but existentially exhausted from the constant pursuit. One night, after a particularly brutal shift, I walked through the warehouse district near the hospital. Instead of going straight home, I wasn't going anywhere specific. I just stopped trying to get anywhere. Stopped trying to make my research career happen. Stopped trying to control what came next. I was just walking, present with the morning light on brick walls, the sound of my footsteps, the smell of coffee from an early opening cafe. And I walked past a building I'd passed 100 times before without noticing. But this time, I noticed. There was a small plaque by the door. Institute for Consciousness Studies. I'd literally never seen it before, despite walking this route for months. Something made me go inside. Not a decision, really. More like my body just moved toward the door. The receptionist looked surprised to see anyone this early. "Can I help you?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just saw the sign." She smiled. "Dr. Chen sometimes says the people who are meant to find us usually aren't looking. He's upstairs in the lab if you want to talk to him." Dr. Marcus Chen turned out to be a neuroscientist, researching exactly what I'd been observing. The neural correlates of spontaneous healing, the patterns that appear when people stop forcing outcomes. He'd been trying to find someone with clinical observation experience to help analyze data from a new study. Within 3 weeks, I'd left the hospital and joined his research team. Not because I'd chased it, because I'd stopped chasing and it appeared. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you into something real. If you've been feeling like something's clicking, if a part of you is recognizing your own power, tap that like button if you just had an aha moment, because like attracts like. Hit subscribe. Stay with this space. Grow with us. Join the Manifestation Club. Links in the description. This isn't just a channel, it's a frequency. If you felt a shift while watching, you're already tuned in. Let me be precise about what I mean by stopping the chase, because this gets misunderstood. I'm not talking about becoming passive. I'm not talking about giving up on what you want. I'm talking about something much more specific. When you chase an outcome, your nervous system is in a state of perceived lack. You're oriented toward what you don't have. Your neural activity is organized around the gap between current reality and desired future. This creates a specific electromagnetic pattern that your body broadcasts constantly. Here's what the research shows. This lack-based pattern actually decreases your ability to recognize resources, opportunities, and pathways that are available right now. Your attention becomes so fixated on the future you're trying to create that you miss the present moment information that would actually get you there. But when you release outcome attachment, something shifts neurologically. You're still clear about what you want. You're still taking action, but your nervous system isn't broadcasting lack anymore. You're not oriented toward a future you don't have. You're present with what actually is right now, including possibilities you couldn't see from the chasing state. I tested this with Dr. Chen's research participants. We measured attention patterns in two groups. One group was instructed to actively pursue a specific goal using visualization, planning, and constant focus on their desired outcome. The other group was told to hold their goal lightly, take actions that felt natural rather than forced, and practice being present with whatever was actually happening. After 90 days, the second group had significantly better outcomes. Not because they worked less hard, they often took more actions than the first group. But their actions were responsive to actual opportunities rather than adherence to preconceived strategy. More significantly, their neural scans showed dramatically different patterns. The outcome-chasing group had elevated stress hormones, decreased pattern recognition capability, and narrowed attention. The present-focused group showed activation in the neural networks associated with insight, broader attention, and spontaneous opportunity recognition. One of Dr. Chen's research subjects was a former paramedic named James. He'd spent 5 years trying to transition into emergency medicine education, applications to every program, networking to exhaustion, following up on every lead. Nothing worked. He came to our study burned out and considering giving up entirely. We didn't tell him to give up. We just taught him to notice when his nervous system was in chasing mode versus present mode, and to practice shifting from one to the other. At first I thought this was useless, he told me later. I thought, how is noticing my nervous system going to help me get into a program? But I kept practicing, and something weird started happening. What? I stopped checking my email compulsively. I stopped refreshing application portals 20 times a day. I stopped trying to strategize every interaction with potential contacts. And I started noticing other things. Conversations I was already having, resources I already had access to, ideas that came to me randomly. 3 weeks into the practice, James was having coffee with an old coworker, not networking, just catching up. His nervous system was relaxed, present, not chasing anything. And his coworker mentioned that the hospital where she now worked was developing a new emergency response training program, but struggling to find someone with both field experience and teaching interest. Normally, I would have jumped on that, tried to force it, made it into a whole thing, James said. But instead, I just mentioned that I'd been thinking about that exact kind of program. Not trying to sell myself, just sharing what was true. His coworker introduced him to the program director. They had a conversation, not an interview, a conversation. James wasn't chasing the opportunity, so he wasn't performing or trying to prove anything. He was just present, sharing his actual experience and ideas. They offered him a position designing the program 2 weeks later. The insane thing, James said, is that I walked past that hospital hundreds of times when I was desperately chasing opportunities. I never once thought to look there. My attention was so focused on the traditional programs I thought I was supposed to pursue that I couldn't see what was actually available. This is what I mean by reality starting to chase you. It's not that the universe magically provides. It's that when you stop broadcasting lack and desperation, your nervous system can actually perceive what's already there. And what's there is almost always more interesting than what you were trying to force. Dr. Chen had instruments that could measure the electromagnetic fields generated by the human heart and brain. We tested this with participants, measuring their field patterns during outcome-chasing states versus present-focused states. The difference was striking. During chasing, the field was chaotic, incoherent, full of conflicting frequencies. During presence, the field became coherent, organized, what physicists call phase-locked. You know what this reminds me of? Dr. Chen said, showing me the coherent pattern. A radio signal that's clear enough to be received versus one that's just noise. That's when it clicked for me. When you're desperately chasing outcomes, you're broadcasting noise. Your electromagnetic field is signaling lack, desperation, trying to control what you can't control. And that noise makes it harder for opportunities to find you. Not because the universe is judging you, because your signal is unclear. But when you stop chasing, when your nervous system settles into present moment awareness, while still holding clear intention, your field becomes coherent. You're broadcasting a clear signal of what you are, not what you lack. And that clarity makes you visible to matching opportunities in ways that chasing never could. We tested this theory by having participants practice what we called present intention, not goal setting, not visualization. Just practicing being fully present while holding a clear sense of what they genuinely wanted without attachment to how or when it would arrive. The results were consistent across participants. Within 30 to 60 days, people reported opportunities, connections, and resources appearing that were directly relevant to their intentions, but that they never could have planned or predicted. A woman who wanted to transition careers but had been stuck in paralysis about which path to take suddenly got clear on a direction she'd never considered through a random conversation at a coffee shop. A man who'd been trying to force a relationship into existence for 2 years met someone unexpected the week after he genuinely released his attachment to making it happen with the wrong person. A couple struggling with infertility for 5 years conceived within 3 months of stopping the desperate pursuit of pregnancy and just living. I need to be clear about something. This isn't magic. This isn't the secret. This is observable neuroscience interfacing with opportunity structures in ways that are measurable and repeatable. When your prefrontal cortex stops dominating your neural activity with constant future projection, several things happen simultaneously. Your default mode network activates, allowing spontaneous pattern recognition across non-obvious domains. This is experienced as insight, intuition, sudden knowing. Your attention broadens. Instead of the narrow, focused attention of goal pursuit, you develop what's called open monitoring attention. You notice more of what's actually present. Your stress hormones decrease. Cortisol drops. DHEA increases. This shift affects how your cells respond to information, how your immune system functions, how your body allocates resources. Your heart rate variability increases. This is a marker of nervous system flexibility, the ability to respond appropriately to what's actually happening rather than reacting based on past patterns or future fears. Your electromagnetic field becomes more coherent. This isn't mystical, it's measurable physics. And coherent fields interact differently with their environment than chaotic fields do. All of these changes happen not through effort, but through release, through stopping the constant chase. In the comments, share one small act you're committing to today, something that anchors you into present awareness. It could be as simple as breathe, or trust, or open. Your word matters. Your act matters, because you matter. And remember, by commenting, you're not just participating, you're anchoring this new frequency into your reality. About a year into the research, I started documenting cases outside the formal study. People who'd experienced this shift naturally, without any training or framework. I interviewed a morgue attendant named David who worked in the hospital basement. Quiet guy, kept to himself. But there was something about his presence that was different from most people I encountered. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said one night when I was down there filing paperwork. "Sure." "You seem, I don't know how to describe it, like nothing rattles you. How do you maintain that working in a place like this?" He was quiet for a moment, then smiled slightly. "You want to know the truth? I used to be a complete mess. Anxiety through the roof, chasing every goal, every opportunity, every chance to prove myself. What changed? This job, actually. I took it thinking it was temporary while I figured out my real career. I was so focused on getting somewhere else that I barely noticed where I actually was. Then one night, about 3 months in, I was working alone down here. It was 3 a.m., dead quiet, no pun intended. And I just stopped. I stopped trying to be anywhere else. Stopped trying to make my life into something different. I just existed in that moment, in that place, doing that work. And something shifted. I can't explain it better than that. What happened after? Opportunities started appearing, not because I was chasing them, because I was finally present enough to see them. A doctor I'd barely talked to mentioned a research position. I wasn't even thinking about research, but something about it felt right. So I applied, got it, worked there for 2 years, learned more than any degree could have taught me. Then someone I'd met during that research mentioned this consciousness study happening, and I ended up as a consultant on a project studying exactly what I'd experienced. You're working with Dr. Chen? Once a month, analyzing data on spontaneous healing cases from a morgue perspective. Understanding what happens at the cellular level post-mortem actually reveals a lot about what happens at the cellular level during life. I just stared at him. You see what I'm saying? David continued. When I was chasing, I was trying to become a researcher through the front door. Applications, degrees, the whole traditional path. When I stopped chasing, I became a researcher through the morgue, through death studies, through a path I never could have planned. And it's more interesting than anything I was trying to force. Here's what I want you to understand. This mechanism, this pattern of release leading to opportunity, isn't something you have to make happen. It's already operating. Your nervous system is designed to function this way. The problem is that modern culture has trained you to override your natural nervous system patterns. You've been taught that success requires constant striving, relentless pursuit, never giving up. And that's true for certain types of achievement. But it's incomplete because there's a type of opportunity, a quality of outcome, that can't be reached through force. That only appears when you stop trying to make it appear. Think about the last time you tried desperately to remember something. A name, a word, a fact you knew you knew. The harder you tried, the more it eluded you. Then you gave up, turned your attention elsewhere, and suddenly it appeared. Not through trying, through releasing the try. This same pattern operates at much larger scales. Relationships, career opportunities, creative breakthroughs, health improvements. There's a category of outcomes that can only arrive when you stop chasing them. But here's the nuance. You can't stop chasing as a strategy to make them appear. That's still chasing. You have to genuinely release attachment to the specific outcome while remaining clear about what you actually want. This is what makes it so counterintuitive. You're not becoming passive. You're not giving up on your desires. You're shifting from force-based pursuit to recognition-based navigation. After 3 years of research, Dr. Chen and I developed a specific protocol for training this shift, not a manifestation technique. A neurological training method for developing the capacity to be present with reality while holding clear intention. Phase 1. Recognition training. Spend 10 minutes daily just noticing when your nervous system is in chasing mode versus present mode. Not trying to change it, just recognizing the felt difference. Chasing mode feels like tension in your chest or throat, mind racing through future scenarios, sense of not enoughness, compulsive checking behaviors, inability to rest. Present mode feels like breath moves easily, mind is quiet or focused on what's actually here. Sense of sufficiency, even if you want more. Actions feel natural rather than forced. Capacity to rest while still desiring. Phase 2. Intentional release. Once you can recognize chasing mode, practice consciously releasing it, not suppressing it, not fighting it, just letting it go, like unclenching a fist. You do this by bringing your attention to your body, noticing where the chasing manifests as physical tension, and breathing into that space until the tension releases. This isn't relaxation. This is nervous system training. You're teaching your system that it's safe to not constantly pursue future outcomes. Phase 3. Present intention. This is the practice that creates the shift. You hold your intention, what you genuinely want, clearly in your awareness. But you practice experiencing yourself as already complete, already whole, regardless of whether the outcome arrives. You're not pretending you have what you want. You're recognizing that your worth, your wholeness, your okayness doesn't depend on getting it. From this place, you act, but your actions come from fullness rather than lack, from creativity rather than desperation, from recognition of what's actually available rather than forcing what you think should be there. Phase 4. Recognition and response. As you practice this, opportunities will appear, not because you're manifesting them, because you're finally able to perceive them. Your practice is to recognize these opportunities and respond to them without falling back into chasing mode. You engage with what shows up without trying to force it into your preconceived plan. This last phase is crucial. Most people do the inner work, then immediately revert to forcing mode the second an opportunity appears. They grab at it, try to control it, chase it until it disappears. The practice is to remain present and responsive even as you engage with opportunities, to let them unfold at their natural pace, to trust the process that brought them to your attention in the first place. I left hospital work entirely about 18 months into the research. Not because I was chasing a research career anymore, because I'd stopped chasing. And the research path appeared as a natural evolution of where I already was. But the real transformation wasn't professional. It was internal. I stopped experiencing life as something I had to constantly manage, control, and force into specific shapes. I started experiencing it as something I participated in, responded to, danced with. Problems still appeared, challenges still arose, but I met them differently. Not with desperate strategizing about how to force specific outcomes, with present moment awareness of what was actually available, what was actually possible, what was actually true. And from that presence, actions emerged that were more effective than anything I'd planned. Conversations happened that led to unexpected opportunities. Resources appeared from directions I'd never considered. Doors opened that I hadn't known existed. Sarah, the patient whose recovery started this entire investigation, described it perfectly when I interviewed her for the final research paper. "It's not that life became easier," she said. "It's that I stopped fighting with reality about what was supposed to happen. And in that release, I found I had so much more energy for engaging with what actually was happening, including opportunities I'd been too busy chasing to notice." I'm not going to tell you to give up your goals. I'm not going to suggest you stop taking action or become passive about your life. That's not what this is about. What I'm inviting you to consider is this. What if the outcomes you're chasing are already trying to reach you, but your desperate pursuit is making you unavailable to recognize them? What if the opportunities you need are already present, but your attention is so fixated on the specific future you think you're supposed to create that you can't see the present moment where those opportunities actually exist? What if reality is already moving toward you, but your constant chasing is like running away from something that's trying to catch up? The practice isn't complicated. Notice when you're chasing. Release the chase. Stay present with what is, while holding clear intention for what you desire. Respond to what appears rather than forcing what you think should appear. Do this consistently, and you'll notice something shift. Not because you've learned a new manifestation technique, because you've stopped interfering with a natural process that was always operating. Reality doesn't need you to chase it. It needs you to be present enough to recognize what it's offering. The second you stop chasing outcomes, you create space for outcomes to find you. Not through magic, through nervous system coherence, through broadened attention, through the simple physics of becoming available to what's actually here rather than fixated on what you think should be there. Your next move isn't to chase this insight, to try to force this shift, to make not chasing into another thing you desperately pursue. Your next move is simply to notice right now, this moment. Is your nervous system in chasing mode or present mode? And if it's chasing, can you release it just for this breath, just for this moment? See what appears when you stop running toward what you want and just exist completely in what already is. The outcomes you've been chasing are already in motion. Your job isn't to catch them. Your job is to stop running long enough for them to catch you. Make sure you share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. For you, it may be just sharing. But for someone exhausted from chasing, someone who's been running toward their dreams so hard they can't see what's already here, this might be the permission they needed to finally stop. Your sharing spreads presence. and that grounded energy amplifies everything you're allowing to unfold. Be the friend who shares breakthroughs. Pass this on if something shifted inside you.